But it is time to begin because we have many things to discuss. And I am very pleased to say that the interest in this session is extremely high. I may say that we have the highest numbers of speakers in this session. And in a way, I also may say that in the past, it wasn't so that the second dimension, the second committee received most of the interest, but now it has become this, and I dare to say rightly so. We have a very distinguished panel, a very interesting program, so I have to ask you to end the last private conversations that I can see from up here. Good morning again to those still standing. If you would kindly take your seats. We have to make sure that we use our time well because we have many speakers lined up. Ladies and gentlemen, my dear colleagues, distinguished delegates, I'm very happy to welcome you for this session too. My name is Gudrun Kugler. I'm a member of parliament in Austria. I am honored to be one of the vice presidents of the OSCE, and I'm very happy to be special representative on demographic change and security, an issue that is also very important for the second committee. So I'm very honored to chair this meeting. I want to say a big thank you to the International Secretariat, Marco Bonabello, who we have worked on the issues of the second committee for many years very well. And a big thank you, of course, to our Turkish hosts. Let me say a few words about today's topic. Remember, we are talking about 50 years OSCE Helsinki Act. When the Helsinki Final Act was signed in 1975, Europe was even more divided, and dictatorships were frequent in the OSCE area, and basic human rights were not guaranteed. The Helsinki process and later the OSCE helped to create a shared set of rules, the famous 10 principles of the Helsinki Final Act, including sovereign equality, inviolability of frontiers, and economic cooperation. Security is more than the absence of war, and this is shown in our 3 dimensions, with the economic dimension being one of them. And the OSCE has contributed intensely to connectivity in the last 50 years, something we can be very proud of. Today, the 57 OSCE participating states represent one of the world's largest concentration of market economies, democracies, and rule of law economies. Yet, we see this region endangered, for example, by weaponizing energy or grain exports, or by a divide and rule policy that comes in from third countries. In order to continue our path of connectivity and economic prosperity, it is key that we create trust and that we establish more connectivity within the OSCE space, more strategic connectivity by building infrastructure and by creating energy corridors, for example. Parliamentary diplomacy and parliamentarians to engage in creating this strategic connectivity in our own parliaments are key drivers for this development. It's also important that within the OSCE region, we strengthen regional groups such as the Danube region, the 3 Seas region, the Mediterranean region. This is also areas where we can increase in a local and regional manner our connectivity. We also notice that some of the populations in the OSCE region, especially in the East, are shrinking. Western countries will follow. Austria, my country, for example, our shrinking process will begin in 2040. We have a demographic winter, and we have talked about this in Porto and adopted a unanimous resolution on the problem. This also means that our workforces are shrinking. Globalization is a fact, and so is migration. But the competition for workers should not result in so-called, and I apologize for the harsh word, demographic cannibalism. Brain drain challenges regional security, while brain circulation enhances it. So maybe that is something we need to look in together with more detail. Connectivity makes cooperation prevail over fragmentation and leads to security and prosperity. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly has always emphasized the necessity of rule-based economic interaction and economic cooperation as a fundamental basis for security and peace. Efficient transport routes, reliable digital links, and resilient supply chains are crucial to sustaining competitiveness and ensuring that our societies continue to thrive. Along those lines, I'm very glad that we will use the next couple of hours to deepen all of these questions and to think together how we can enhance connectivity. To this end, I thank our speakers for today contributing their expertise, and I look forward to a constructive and forward-looking discussion with all of you. Dear colleagues, in our deliberations, we are fortunate today to be inspired by a distinguished panel of speakers from Istanbul Bilgi University, from the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, from the OSCE, and from our very own second committee. Their participation reflects a central message of this session. Achieving comprehensive and sustainable security requires connectivity and fair trade. Hence, please join me in welcoming our panelists and thanking them for their readiness to share insight and views with us here in Istanbul. Our first speaker today is Professor Mustafa Ege Yazgan, Rector of Istanbul Bilgi University and Director of its Center for Financial Studies. He is an experienced economist whose work bridges financial systems, macroeconomic policy, and technological innovation. With an academic career spanning Istanbul, Cambridge, and Sussex, numerous publications on forecasting, trade, economic connectivity, Professor Yazgan brings deep expertise to today's discussion on sustainable and resilient economic development and cooperation. Dear Professor Yazgan, we are very pleased to have you today, especially this, given the location of this meeting and the location of your university, it's very fitting. Professor Yazgan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm honored to make this presentation here in front of you. So I'll be quick because I have only 10 minutes. So first I will talk about a little bit on the shape of the world trade. As you can see on the graph, the world trade, this is the sum of imports and exports and merchandise and services included, has halted after the great financial crisis of 2008. So I'll make the world trade during this time up to the 2008. The world trade has been expanding, but the expansion doesn't do the same effects on different countries. As you can see from the graphs, United States and China are two different patterns. One is in China, when trade is expanding, trade balance is also, this trade surplus is also expanding. However, in the United States, the completely opposite situation occurs, and when trade is expanding, trade deficit instead of surplus is expanding too. This is one of the conflicts in the global trade at the present time as well. So you see Germany and Turkey as well on the graph. So, and then let me talk about a little bit more this why this has been happening, why the trade has halted since 2008 crisis. So you can see this is the graph of the share of world manufacturing production. China has become the sole player in this field. So almost 35% of the whole production, total world production of manufacturing is done only by China. Now this percentage I think is higher, but the share of the USA and the others is declining, as you can see. This is one conflict area as you can, this has been also manifested by the recent trade tariff wars and etc. And that's another graph. It shows you the dependence of the main players in the world trade on China. As you can see, France, Italy, UK, Canada, and USA, all others, has becoming more and more dependent on China, on industrial inputs, and in their production structure. Okay, so however, we see a different pattern in when we look at only services. The trade is not as severely as contracting in the case of trade in services, opposite of the merchandise trade. So this is why is that? Because the trade has been slightly shifting from the merchandise trade to services. One of the reasons behind this is the recent implementation of industrial policy, new industrial policy. What you see on this graph, the global industrial policy interventions, industrial policy implementations. So you see the uprising in industrial policy interventions, especially after 2016. So what is industrial policy? What do I mean by industrial policy? Definition is targeted or selective government intervention aimed at developing or supporting specific locally based firms or sectors with economic or non-economic objectives, security, social, and environmental. Okay, so who are the champions of this in the new implementations of new industrial policy, and that has been caused stagnation in the merchandise world trade? China, and you see China and USA, they constitute both more than 30% of the whole industrial policy implementations all over the world during that period of time. And Turkey is ranked on the 15th, so it is not among the 75 countries. So Turkey is also an active player in this field, and EU, not as a separate jurisdiction, not only their member states, is also on the 8th rank. Okay, so this is a structural shift, and industrial policy is now embedded in long-term competitiveness, security, and sustainability agendas. Okay, so that creates rule-based pressures on the rule-based trade system. So we analyzed a data set, and then we identified two types of groups or clusters among those industrial policy implementations. One group is mixed mode industrial economies, European Union, United States, China, and India. What are their characteristics? Extensive use of trade instruments, export restrictions, import measures, screening, etc. Significant but not dominant subsidy activity. And the other group includes Germany, France, Italy, Spain, etc., and most other EU member states, and their characteristics are heavy reliance on subsidies, tax incentives, strong climate mission, and lower use of trade measures and defensive instruments. And then they represent also the green competitiveness model. So whether these two clusters are incompatible or not, my answer is they are not incompatible, and there are a lot of areas that for coordination and then win-win situations. So then connectivity is also very important issue, as a stabilizing force in global trade. So let me talk briefly about the OSCE role in fragmenting industrial landscape and promoting more cooperation across all these industrial policy implementations. So the OSCE is uniquely positioned at the intersection of economic connectivity and security cooperation, and as industrial policy intensify, the OSCE can contribute by fostering transparency, supporting dialogue, promoting alignment of standards for green and digital technologies, mapping supply chain vulnerabilities, encouraging inclusive participation. So, therefore, there are a lot of cooperations area that can be accomplished by through this uniquely positioned platform. And then the world trade, the future of the world trade, a rule-based trade, can be created through conversations and then connectivities and all sorts of activities that can be fostered by OSCE uniquely, and that will contribute a lot for the future of rule-based trade system in the world. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Yazgan. On the one hand, to point out how we as the OSCE region should not miss the train. On the other hand, of what to do as members of parliament. That was very helpful, very practical. Thank you so much. Our next speaker, my pleasure to introduce, but I do not really need to introduce him, is Azai Guliev, who is the chair of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly's second committee, namely on economic affairs, science, technology, and environment. Azai, we have worked together now, we can say for many years, we have worked together in a very fruitful manner. You have been key and deeply involved in promoting parliamentary diplomacy. You have done a lot with regard to international connectivity. You have supported very much the Silk Road support group within our assembly, which is quite a good example for connectivity. And you have led the second committee now already for quite a while. So you really are an expert on what are the key challenges ahead and how parliaments can help strengthen rule-based global trade and resilient connectivity. Azai, thank you for all your work within the Assembly, and now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Gudrun. First of all, let me wish once again my sincere gratitude to our Turkish host, to the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, and particularly to the head of the delegation and the entire team, and for their excellent organization of our 23rd autumn session in Turkey. And also my profound thanks also go to you, dear Gudrun, for your leadership in moderating this important session today. It is a privilege to take part in this important session here in the magnificent city of Istanbul, bringing together such distinguished panelists to discuss an issue that lies at the heart of our shared security and prosperity. As you well know, within the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, General Committee on Economic Affairs, Science, Technology and Environment, promoting connectivity and safeguarding a rules-based global trading system have long been central priorities. Fully in line with the OSCE's comprehensive and multidimensional approach to security, we affirm that economic integration, sustainable trade, and resilient connectivity are not merely drivers of our prosperity, but also indispensable pillars of lasting peace and stability across the region. Dear colleagues, today in my remarks, I will mainly focus on the following three key challenges: climate change, armed conflicts, geopolitical competition, and reliable connectivity. First challenge, climate change. We all know that the climate crisis is reshaping our economies and our security environment. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that over the past 2 decades, climate-related disasters have cost the global economy more than $15 trillion, further deepening inequalities and undermining governance. Moreover, extreme weather events are disrupting infrastructures and supply chains, while the transport sector, responsible for about a quarter of global greenhouse gas emissions, remains heavily dependent on fossil fuels. Yet, our collective response still falls short. According to the United Nations Environment Programme, even full implementation of current emission reduction pledges under the Paris Agreement would raise global temperatures by 2.3 to 2.5 degrees Celsius, with serious implications for stability. We must act with a genuine sense of urgency, strengthening mitigation efforts, enhancing adaptation measures, and advancing fair and predictable financing mechanisms. At the same time, we should recognize that current challenges also present an opportunity to make our trade and transport systems more sustainable by improving energy efficiency, accelerating decarbonization of mobility, and expanding investments in renewable energy sector. In that sense, it would be reasonable to recall our Porto Declaration, which calls on governments to adopt ambitious climate action plans aligned with the outcomes of COP29 held in Baku and with the targets of Paris Agreement. I also wish to inform our distinguished colleagues that in my capacity as chair of the second committee, I represented our assembly at the 2025 OSCE Environmental and Economic Dimension Implementation meeting held on 28th and 29th October in Vienna. There, I conveyed our firm position on the subject and urged all OSCE participating states to intensify their efforts to strengthen resilience in the face of mounting global challenges. I also emphasized that resilience must not be viewed merely as the ability to recover from crisis, but rather as a comprehensive approach grounded in prevention, preparedness, as well as effective and accountable governance. Second challenge, wars and armed conflicts. Wars and armed conflicts place an enormous strain on connectivity and economic stability. They destroy critical infrastructure, disrupt supply chains, paralyze trade, and undermine trust, frequently with consequences that extend far beyond the directly affected regions. The Russian Federation's war of aggression against Ukraine is a stark example. Beyond its human and environmental cause, it adversely affects global trade, jeopardizes energy security, and destabilize supply chains. Recalling again our Porto Declaration, I firmly condemn all attacks on energy and civilian infrastructures, as well as targeting diplomatic missions, including recent renewed missile strike on the building of Azerbaijan's embassy in Ukraine. Targeting such facilities threatens the economic and energy stability of the entire region and blatantly violates Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations of 1961. However, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly supports all diplomatic efforts toward a just and lasting peace based on international law, including its core principles concerning the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the states, and also continues preparing for post-conflict recovery, addressing stabilization, energy security, and ecological rehabilitation. As you know, the strong stance of our Assembly was once again underscored by President Peropons during his recent meeting with President Zelensky in Kiev. Third challenge, geopolitical competition and reliable connectivity. Beyond conflicts, another destabilizing factor stems from rising competition in global markets. The growing competition for strategic resources, critical materials, and emerging technologies is increasingly weakening the foundations of open and rules-based trade. Unfortunately, in many cases, long-term multilateral cooperation gives way to short-term bilateral strategies that prioritize immediate advantage over collective prosperity. Another concern is that the introduction of excessive tariffs and other restrictive measures risk fragmenting markets and undermining the resilience of global supply chains. According to the World Trade Organization, global merchandise trade is projected to contract by 0.2% in 2025, driven largely by rising trade policy uncertainty and the protectionist measures. Between October 2024 and May 2025, the share of import restrictions among all trade interventions reached 44%, while export restrictions more than doubled to 14%, illustrating a systematic shift towards restrictive practices. Dear colleagues, as I mentioned before, today global connectivity and supply chains are strained by geopolitical tensions, regional conflicts, and infrastructural gaps. Disruptions to key transport routes, higher logistical costs, and the limited alternative corridors weaken the predictability and security of international trade. In this context, reliable connectivity has become essential for global commerce and sustainable growth. In this respect, the strategic significance of the Middle Transport Network and its enhancement through the Zangezur Corridor or the Trump Road for International Peace and Prosperity continues to grow. Together with the broader Trans-Caspian International Transport Corridor, these roads serve as vital, secure, and future-oriented arteries linking Asia and Europe. By providing safer and more efficient and diversified transport links, we can not only strengthen regional connectivity, but also reduce dependence on single transit channels, thereby mitigating geopolitical vulnerabilities and contributing to greater security, resilience, and prosperity across the wider region. As parliamentarians, we must redouble our efforts to revitalize multilateral cooperation, ensuring that connectivity and trade remain drivers of security, inclusiveness, and sustainable development. Here, I am pleased to acknowledge that, alongside the statutory institutions of our Assembly, as our dear friend Gudrun mentioned rightly, the Silk Road Group within the OSCE has played and stands ready to continue playing a pivotal role in promoting dialogue and practical cooperation among member states. Its efforts are instrumental in advancing connectivity, particularly across key sectors such as transport, trade, energy, investment, tourism, and intercultural exchange. Dear colleagues, while the challenges before us are considerable, they also offer new opportunities to build stronger and more reliable connectivity. To move forward, we must reinforce global trade in three key respects: closer cooperation through regional agreements, resilient transit corridors, green infrastructure, and shared resource management, turning interdependence into mutual strengths. Inclusive participation across society, engaging the private sector, civil society, and local communities, and ensuring gender equality and youth empowerment as drivers of innovation and prosperity. Responsible digital transformation, using new technologies for early warning, data sharing, and smarter economic planning, while preventing misuse and promoting digital diplomacy as a force for peace and progress. The EU Parliamentary Assembly contributes to these goals by generating political will, fostering dialogue, and promoting policy coherence. Legislators can translate cooperation into tangible results, strengthening trust between nations and between institutions and citizens. Partnership with our executive structures is essential in this endeavor. This is why I am particularly grateful to the Office of the coordinator of OSCE Economic and Environmental Activities, and especially to Ambassador Zupov for inviting me to the 2025 OSCE Environmental and Economic Dimension Implementation Meeting, and for joining us today to share the organization's efforts in this important field. In conclusion, let me reiterate my firm conviction that our collective future depends on the choices we make today. By investing in resilient connectivity, sustainable development, and genuinely shared progress, we can strengthen the security, stability, and prosperity of the entire OSCE region. If we act with the unity of purpose and strategic vision, we will not only address the challenges before us, but also shape a more predictable, cooperative, and forward-looking regional order for generations to come. I thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Asai. You have outlined your concerns, but also your solutions, and I share many of those points. And I'm very glad that you also underlined the work that was done in Porto, because the Porto Declaration is not just some document. It's a common effort of all of us, many months of preparation, many hours of debate. And I think that in our parliamentary work, at home even, we should use the resolutions, the texts, unanimous declarations that we have come up with, because the answers and the solutions are in there. Thank you very much, Asai. Our next speaker is Mr. John Drummond, who is the head of division trade policy at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. And you know, when I talk to people in my country and I say, oh, I work with the OSCE, they say, oh, the OECD. And so I always have to explain that the OSCE is not the OECD, but today we are together on a panel. Mr. Drummond brings expertise in trade liberalization, global value chains, and digital economy. He leads the development of the OECD's Services Trade Restrictiveness Index and has many, many years of experience in these areas, originally also with Global Affairs Canada, assignments to the World Trade Organization, and several other institutions. John, we are very glad that you are here with us today. We are looking forward to hearing your presentation. Shifting geopolitical landscapes actually change our realities. You know a lot more about it. Thanks for joining us, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair and distinguished delegates. Good morning. It's great to have OSCE and OECD together in the same event, and a lot of shared interest. I really welcome the invitation to discuss these global economic challenges and policy measures that can address them. Now, the OECD's most recent economic outlook shows that despite high policy uncertainty, the global economy has in fact continued to be resilient throughout the first half of this year. But the risks to this outlook remain very significant. Additional increases in barriers to trade or prolonged policy uncertainty can lower growth, and it will raise production costs and weigh on investment and consumption. Our analysis shows that OSCE economies will be among the most effective by further trade fragmentation, given the deep integration in global supply chains and relatively high dependency on trade in intermediate goods. Constructive dialogue between countries remains a key priority to ensure a lasting resolution of trade tensions. Well-functioning open global markets mean stronger growth, higher incomes, lower costs, and better standards of living. And our chair noted in her introduction that OSCE countries are a powerful example of these benefits. We should continue to draw on these very real gains while tackling genuine concerns about unfair trading practices, an unlevel playing field, and supply chain resilience. Our strong advice to all governments is to work together, to work harder, and to work bilaterally, plurilaterally, and multilaterally to find the best possible ways for our international trading arrangements to be fairer, to function better for sustainable growth. Our shared interest is to preserve the economic benefits of open markets and the rules-based global trading system. And Chair, as you said, we can do this by building trust, and the OECD commends the parliamentary diplomacy that's at work here this week. With this in mind, I'd like to use my time to make 3 points for your consideration. First of all, on fostering more resilient global supply chains, we do see that concentration in our supply chains is on the rise, and by extension, so are the risks of disruptions. On average across all countries, based on an assessment of about 4,800 globally traded goods, by the early 2020s, the proportion of import concentrated goods has increased by about 50% compared to the late 1990s. But simply relocalizing production is not the answer. We estimate that addressing high concentration by focusing only on relocating production domestically would reduce global real GDP by more than 5%. Instead, we recommend strengthening trade facilitation tools to eliminate choke points at borders, lowering barriers to services underpinning supply chains such as transportation and logistics services, and building cooperation with business to enhance awareness of supply chains. Second, on unlocking the full benefits of artificial intelligence for connectivity and productivity. We estimate that even in a scenario of slow adoption, AI will contribute between 0.2% and 0.4 percentage points to annual labor productivity over the next decade. Our ongoing work suggests that these gains could be broadly similar across the larger base of OSCE economies. To realize these benefits, OSCE countries have a number of assets to draw on, including integration into global value chains, skilled populations, and a strong base in terms of digital connectivity. Building on this, we can further widen diffusion and availability of AI, particularly for small and medium-sized business, by ensuring affordable broadband connectivity and encouraging a more competitive AI ecosystem to promote better services at lower prices. And importantly, we need more investment in skills and human capital to empower people through training, improved AI literacy, and support for lifelong learning. We're in the process of developing a new OECD recommendation on AI in labor markets to help guide these efforts and ensure that everyone has the best possible opportunity to participate and benefit from the opportunities created by AI. My third point is on advancing global tax cooperation, which provides businesses with the certainty they need to invest and compete, while alleviating the need for counterproductive unilateral measures and preventing double taxation. The OECD has a long history of advancing effective international tax cooperation. Most recently, there has been important progress on the two-pillar solution, including the global minimum tax, with 71 jurisdictions around the world having already enacted or taken concrete steps towards implementing legislation. In June, G7 countries adopted a proposal on the way forward for the operation of global minimum tax arrangements between the United States Global Minimum Tax Framework and the OECD G20 Inclusive Framework on Base Erosion and Profit Shifting. The OECD Secretariat will continue supporting the Inclusive Framework members in these discussions to build a fair and sustainable consensus, to preserve the gains that have been made, and ultimately to secure certainty and stability on a lasting, mutually beneficial deal, which would be good for growth and opportunity around the world. So in closing, Chair, we are navigating a challenging global environment, but we have the tools to help business operate, innovate, and grow by strengthening our supply chains, by unlocking the benefits of AI, and by promoting tax cooperation for greater certainty. So please count on the OECD to work with you, with your parliamentary group towards these goals, leveraging data and evidence-based analysis to foster cooperation. I wish you a productive meeting and look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. You highlighted constructive dialogue. That's really what we are hoping to do here. You also gave us some key indications of what our work as parliamentarians could be to enhance connectivity and economic development by unlocking potentials such as AI and others. But this is absolutely key, and we will be sure to follow your advice. And also thank you for being here in the name of OECD, because for us at OSCE, this partnership is highly valued. And please convey to all of your colleagues that we seek to establish closer and closer ties, because we think that this cooperation is very, very meaningful. Thank you, John. We move now to our final speaker, and I'm very pleased to introduce to you Ambassador Bakut Jusupov, who is the coordinator of the OSCE economic and environmental activities. And in this function, I think many of you have already met him, heard him, worked with him, because Ambassador Jusupov has 2 decades of diplomatic experience. He has begun to serve as the ambassador of Kyrgyzstan to multiple countries, including the OSCE and other international organizations in Vienna. This is where we first met. And now in this function, he leads the OSCE work to enhance cross-border cooperation on connectivity by promoting best practices, harmonizing procedures, fostering collaboration between governments. Ambassador Jusupov, we are delighted that you are here with us. We are eager to hear your expertise. You have been for a long time a true friend of this assembly, so we are honored and we are grateful to have you here today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vice President Kugler, Madam Chair, Excellencies, distinguished parliamentarians, colleagues. Let me start by thanking the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly for inviting me to this very conference, and to Turkey for excellent hosting this event. This is another valuable opportunity to strengthen collaboration between OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and OSCE Secretariat, as you has highlighted, dear Madam Kogler. And here I would particularly like to thank Mr. Guliyev for his strong support and for actively promoting this dialogue as a chair of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly General Committee on Economic Affairs, Science, Technology and Environment. Excellencies, dear colleagues, the theme of this autumn meeting is the revitalization of multilateralism. As you all see today, multilateralism is undergoing profound transformation shaped by geopolitical shifts and evolving power dynamics. And just as in earlier periods of geopolitical tension, we are again at the moment where institutions must adapt to remain effective. The OSCE was created precisely for such times. Its comprehensive approach to security, commitment to dialogue, and practical cooperative tools across all 3 dimensions still provide an indispensable platform for dialogue if participating states choose to use its full potential. The Helsinki Plus 50 reflection process, launched by the Finnish chairpersonship and other relevant discussions, provides an opportunity to modernize these tools and reaffirm the fundamentals that have guided European security for 5 decades. For cooperation to work, rules must be respected. Predictability, non-discrimination, and transparency are essential for trade, transport connectivity, and broader economic interaction. When these principles weaken, trust diminishes, uncertainty increases, and the benefits of cooperation shrink for all. Our task is therefore to restore confidence in the rules-based framework and ensure an equal playing field. In this regard, I would like to also highlight, as OSCE Secretary General Sinirli Oğlu underlined yesterday, the OSCE remains a vital platform for dialogue, mutual accountability, and joint solutions, particularly in times of heightened global uncertainty. Excellencies, dear colleagues, let me now share some of the thoughts and practical experiences on our work on trade and transport connectivity in the OSCE region. Connectivity remains at the core of our engagement. Over the past years, it has evolved into a genuinely cross-dimensional area requiring cross-border and cross-regional approaches. It's also one of the fields where we have been able to innovate and work closely with authorities, international organizations, private sector, and local communities. By its very nature, connectivity is confidence building and closely linked to security, touching on resilience, supply chains, digitalization, all central elements of OSCE's second dimension. This year, we launched our new connectivity initiative promoting cross-border connectivity, spanning from Mongolia across Central Asia and South Caucasus to Turkey, Romania, and beyond. The project is focusing on cross-border trade facilitation, digitalization, and risk management procedures at border crossings in line with the 2016 Hamburg Ministerial Council decision on strengthening good governance and promoting connectivity. This initiative will continue to promote an inter-regional digital data platform developed with the World Bank to make the exchange of the trade-related data between government authorities and the private sector more efficient and secure. Furthermore, by increasing the capabilities of customs officials to stop illegal trade, transit, and further trade can be made more efficient and secure, thus boosting economic cooperation and business. This all will lead to less corruption at border cross-pointings, another major focus of our work in the second dimension. I would also like to highlight that this year in September, the OSCE published its practical guide to cross-border facilitation. This guide brings together the key principles, standards, and practical tools needed to improve trade and transport connectivity across the OSCE region. And I'm glad to inform you that we are already using this as a practical instrument in our field activities, training programs, and new connectivity initiatives. Dear colleagues, while highlighting the importance and potential of connectivity with all its aspects, we cannot ignore the implications of climate change and other environmental challenges for connectivity. Adverse impacts of changing climate damage infrastructure, interrupt supply chains, and create a cascade of disruptions for trade and transport. My office is addressing these challenges head-on, supporting participating states in their relevant efforts. Over the past years, through the project promoting green ports and connectivity, we have supported seaports in the Caspian and Black Sea regions to make supply chains connecting Central Asia and Europe safer, more reliable, and more sustainable. Beneficiary seaports of Baku in Azerbaijan, Aktau and Kuryk in Kazakhstan, Turkmenbashi in Turkmenistan, among other tangible results, have also been able to assess their environmental footprint, set clear environmental targets, and achieve EcoPorts certification with support of the OSCE. These steps are key, not only for environmental protection, but also to ensure the resilience and long-term viability of the Middle Corridor. We are now implementing the third phase of this project. While continuing to advance port sustainability and connectivity, this new phase has a stronger focus on climate adaptation and resilience, equipping ports with concrete tools and know-how to safeguard their operability and that of the wider corridor. This is particularly urgent as the region is already experiencing the impacts of the climate change. Another pioneering dimension of this initiative is our work on empowering women in the port and transport sectors, a key driver of portability, sustainability, and innovation. Our project is among the very few globally to address the intersection of women's empowerment and sustainable ports development. Dear colleagues, in conclusion, let me underline 2 points here. First, the agility and flexibility of the second dimension allow us to address practical issues that remain less politicized, offering space for concrete support that builds trust. This is precisely why topics such as connectivity provide such a valuable opportunity. They enable us to deliver tangible benefits while fostering confidence building through cooperation. And I understand why Madam Kugler, in her introduction remarks, highlighted the raising importance of the second dimension. Second, partnership matters. With multilateralism facing challenges, cooperation and joint implementation of specific activities with international organizations and partners helps avoid duplications, ensures efficient use of resources, and delivers high-quality expertise and tangible results, tangible and impactful results to participating states, something they increasingly request from us. And in this regard, cooperation with the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly for the OSCE Secretariat is essential for strengthening our shared agenda. It allows us to link policy with political momentum, expanding the impact and visibility of our joint shared work across the OSCE region. With this, I thank you once again and looking forward for fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you, Bakut. You said a number of things that really underline 50 years of the Helsinki Final Act and why this is so important. You mentioned rules-based framework. This is what we are creating together. You mentioned joint solutions. This is what we are here for together. You mentioned supporting states in their efforts. This is what we do. And you mentioned building trust and confidence. And I think the Parliamentary Assembly, parliamentary diplomacy really is all about that. The conversations that are taking place here make a difference in our politics and how we relate to each other. So thank you so much. And I have to say, I have another reason to say thank you to you, because the OSCE's budget was approved in 21. And it was carried since then, but it was not changed. And it's very difficult for the OSCE to keep up all the important work in this situation. You and your office have done that with great dedication and personal sacrifice. And so we want to say thank you for this. But we also want to encourage everybody here, when we go home, to talk to our governments to make sure that the funding of the OSCE is secure. Because the work that is done, as we can see from your presentation, but also from all the things that we know and join in, that is absolutely crucial. So, Bakut, again, thank you very much. My dear colleagues, we have now come to the end of our speakers and presentations for this morning, and we are moving into our debate. I declare the speakers list closed, so no more new speakers can be added to the list. And as I originally said, the interest in the second committee has grown tremendously. We have now 30 speakers from, if the count is correct, 28 participating states. So this shows the broad interest in the topic. And I have to, due to the amount of the speakers, I have to limit speaking time to 2 minutes. I ask you to respect the time, and we will just now dive into our speakers list. And the first one is Ms. Paula Cardoso from Portugal, followed by Mr. Dusak from Turkey. And Paula Cardoso is now the rapporteur of the third committee, something I did for 3 years with much interest and personal gain. Paula, you're doing a great job, and the floor is yours.
Okay, yeah, has a problem with the sound. Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, I would like to thank the participants in this session for their interesting presentations that brought a new light to some of the subjects we usually discuss in our meetings. As the rapporteur of the Committee on Economic Affairs, Science, Technology and Environment, I am tasked to present next report for 2025-26 annual section. The Bureau of the Committee has already identified several subjects that I will include in the report. These contain some topics on key world trends that I would like to highlight. New technologies and innovation and its impact on our societies and citizens, artificial intelligence and disinformation are obviously areas of interest, sustainable economic development and free trade, climate and environment crisis. On this last subject, we are already analyzing the outcome of the United Nations Climate Change Conference that is taking place in Brazil, but the latest news about global warming are quite alarming. The United Nations Secretary General confirmed that humanity has failed to limit global heating to 1.5 degrees. It is now inevitable that we will exceed the target in the Paris Climate Agreement, with devastating consequences for the world. Also in the context United Nations Climate Change Conference, I would like to welcome the adoption of the Berlin Declaration on Hunger, Poverty and People-Centered Climate Action, signed by leaders from 43 countries and the European Union. The document highlights the fact that the effects of the climate change are already severely impacting populations, worsening hunger, poverty, food insecurity, and compromising access to water. I also want to stress that the situation in Ukraine must continue to be on the top of our agenda with a strong focus on the economic recovery and reconstruction. The role of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly in the economic and environment areas is also an area that deserves our attention. Parliamentarians have a role to play, and we must be courageous when presenting our ideas. Dear colleagues, usually the work of the rapporteur can be very lonely, but I'm looking forward to listening to our ideas and suggestions about the report for the next annual section. We have many topics that can be discussed and our inputs are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. I gave you 1 minute longer because you're the rapporteur. I ask now everybody else to stick to 2 minutes. Next is Mr. Dusak from Turkey, followed by Mr. Wells from Canada.
Mr. President, distinguished parliamentarians, esteemed guests, it's a great pleasure to welcome you all to our country on the occasion of this important meeting. While the global trade ecosystem is often measured in numbers, truly sustainable trade rests on principles that cannot be quantified: mutual trust, justice, fairness, and predictability. Predictability and trust, however, can only flourish where relations are anchored in rules and grounded in fairness. As Turkey, we advocate for the reduction of inequalities in global trade and for the restructuring of production chains in a way that is sustainable, inclusive, and based on universally respected rules. Today, many nations remain deprived of fair competition due to exclusionary nature of the global economic system. This is not merely an economic challenge. It is a moral question of justice. Through its Re-engage Asia initiative and Middle Corridor vision, Turkey is building bridges of fair trade between East and West. For us, trade is not merely the exchange of goods and services. It is the sharing of value, trust, and mutual benefits. Let us not forget, unjust trade cannot serve development. Only trade grounded in justice can sustain cooperation and inclusive growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Wells from Canada, followed by Mr. Burkhardt from Switzerland.
Madam Vice President and colleagues, as this Assembly noted in the Porto Declaration and by our colleague Mr. Guliev, the introduction of new, unjustified trade barriers and tariffs threatens to severely disrupt international trade, fracture global supply chains, and trigger renewed inflationary pressures, thereby undermining economic stability and security across the OSCE region. All around the world, government and private sector decision makers have had to pivot quickly to respond to the new tariffs, and in the case of governments, develop new strategies and programs to support those economic sectors most affected by the surge in protectionism. My country has been particularly impacted, as international trade is one of Canada's major economic drivers, accounting for 2/3 of our country's gross domestic product, and colleagues, 75% of Canada's exports go to the United States. The recent trade disruptions underscore the need for decision makers and entrepreneurs to access timely and accurate trade data. Tracking the flow of goods and services across countries is no easy task, in part because of the complexity of international supply chains and the growing role of digitally delivered trade. Decision makers need current, detailed trade data to make informed decisions about trade policies and to address supply chain bottlenecks. The convergence of global trade and AI may signal the beginning of a profound transformation, one that allows us to better understand complex cross-border exchanges by harnessing the analytical powers of AI. In addition to identifying which products cross borders, trade data can reveal vast amounts of information, including transaction patterns, shipping routes, seasonal trends, buyers, sellers, and even pricing. Using AI would make it easier to turn this information into actionable insight. As the private sector currently owns much of the trade data generated through everyday interactions, government can step in because they also have access to this data through customs reports and bills of lading. Access to timely and accurate trade data will help us navigate today's disruptions and build a more resilient global trade ecosystem for our country's importers and exporters. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wells. Next is Mr. Burkhardt from Switzerland, followed by Mr. Rakov from Belarus.
Dear Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, the OSCE has a long history of supporting peace building and recovery. However, in my view, we are paying little attention to an important precondition for recovery, humanitarian demining. About 1/3 of the world's countries and territories are contaminated with landmines, cluster munitions, and improvised explosive devices. The UN estimates that these indiscriminate weapons threaten the lives of more than 100 million people worldwide. There are thousands of victims every year, about 40% of them are children. But the presence of landmines, cluster munitions, and other explosive remnants of war also impede recovery, access to infrastructure, jobs, and education, as well as the return of refugees. Ukraine is the most heavily mined country in the world. About 137,000 square kilometers of Ukraine's territory is contaminated, larger than the size of England or Greece. In other words, the most mine-contaminated country lies in Europe. Mine contamination has a devastating economic impact on Ukraine and on European as well as global food security. Ukraine loses $11.2 billion annually due to mined areas. Major progress has already been made by Ukraine to address the explosive ordnance contamination through support of many OSCE participating states. 35,000 square kilometers of land has been released back to safe and productive use. Swiss organizations like the Fondation Suisse de Déminage and the Geneva International Center of Humanitarian Demining have supported mine clearance in Ukraine and the development of national strategy. A safe, peaceful, and sustainable future and recovery of Ukraine starts with mine action. I called upon the OSCE participating states to support humanitarian demining as an indispensable precondition for peace and recovery.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burkhardt. The floor goes to Mr. Rakov from Belarus, followed by Ms. Tanguy from France.
Госпожа председатель, Беларусь убеждена, что торговля должна объединять, а не разделять. Сегодня экономическое пространство ОБСЕ и всего Евразийского региона все в большей степени разделено политическими барьерами, а не объединено экономическими связями. Вместо свободной и справедливой торговли наблюдается рост протекционизма, одностороннего давления и санкций. Беларусь считает неприемлемыми и незаконными введенные односторонние ограничительные экономические меры, нарушающие принципы международного права и устава ООН. Эти санкции не только наносят ущерб экономике нашей страны, но и подрывают основы доверия и взаимной выгоды, на которых строилась ОБСЕ. Подобные действия препятствуют достижению целей устойчивого развития, в частности, обеспечению справедливого доступа к рынкам, технологиям и инвестициям. Климатическая и экологическая политика не должна быть заложницей санкционных войн. Мы убеждены, только через равноправное использование транспортных и энергетических коридоров возможно восстановление доверия и экономического сотрудничества на пространстве от Лиссабона до Владивостока. Беларусь никогда не закрывала пункты пропуска на границе для перемещения грузов, товаров и людей. Не в правилах Беларуси использовать границу в политических целях, как это случается у наших западных соседей. Мы активно работаем в рамках Евразийского экономического союза и других интеграционных форматов, продвигая идею открытого и безопасного экономического взаимодействия без барьеров. Торговля должна быть всеобъемлющей и справедливой, а не инструментом давления одних государств на другие. Принцип равных возможностей для всех участников мировой экономики – ключевой элемент подлинного устойчивого роста. Мы призываем партнеров отказаться от конфронтации и вернуться к логике взаимной экономической выгоды. Пора отказаться от односторонних мер и восстановить доверие как главный капитал международных отношений. Беларусь готова быть мостом между Востоком и Западом, между экономикой и экологией, между политикой и здравым смыслом. Благодарю вас.
Thank you, Mr. Rachov. Next is Ms. Tanguy from France, followed by Mr. Mamakarimov from Uzbekistan.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Chers collègues, je remercie vivement nos intervenants pour leurs analyses et le partage de leurs expertises. Je souhaite insister sur l'importance d'un commerce international intégrant pleinement les enjeux climatiques, sociaux et environnementaux et présenter la vision de la France pour un commerce à la fois ouvert, responsable et équitable. Alors que se tient la COP30 à Belém, il est clair que le commerce mondial ne peut se concevoir sans ces impératifs. L'ouverture économique doit aller de pair avec notre responsabilité envers la planète et les générations futures. C'est précisément l'approche défendue par la France, un commerce juste, équilibré et compatible avec un développement durable, ambitieux. Comme l'a rappelé le président Emmanuel Macron, la France ne s'oppose pas au libre-échange, mais reste vigilante sur l'accord entre l'Union européenne et Mercosur, exigeant des garanties solides pour protéger notre agriculture et assurer le respect des normes européennes. La France est prête à commercer, mais à ses conditions, incluant des mesures miroirs, une clause de sauvegarde efficace et des contrôles rigoureux. Il s'agit d'être ouvert, mais exigeant, ferme sur nos standards et cohérent avec notre stratégie climatique. Alors que la COP30 rappelle l'urgence de limiter le réchauffement climatique, nous avons la responsabilité de faire du commerce mondial un levier de transition. Il doit créer la valeur, l'emploi et la prospérité, tout en protégeant les écosystèmes, les populations et notre souveraineté alimentaire. C'est cette vision que porte la France, un libre-échange qui ne sacrifie ni la planète ni nos filières, conciliant ambition économique et exigence environnementale. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tanguy. Next is Mr. Mahmoud Karima from Uzbekistan, followed by Ms. Demarji from Algeria.
Уважаемый председатель, дамы и господа, в современном мире международная торговля становится не просто экономическим инструментом, но и ключевым фактором формирования доверия, устойчивости и взаимопонимания между государствами. Узбекистан под руководством президента Шавката Мирзиёева твердо придерживается курса на открытую, инклюзивную и взаимовыгодную торговлю. Несмотря на нестабильность мировой экономики, в прошлом году Узбекистан показал устойчивый рост. ВВП страны увеличился на 6,3%, достигнув $111 миллиардов. Объем инвестиций составил 36 миллиардов долларов, что на треть выше показателя предыдущего года, а экспорт перевесил 26 миллиардов долларов. В 2025 году Узбекистан делает новый шаг к укреплению транспортно-логистической взаимосвязанности. Объем перевозок по маршруту Узбекистан, Афганистан, Пакистан выросли в 5 раз, открыв прямой выход к портам Индийского океана. Активно развивается транскаспийский международный транспортный коридор, а проекты железной дороги Китай, Кыргызстан, Узбекистан и трансафганские коридоры формируют новые евразийские маршруты, связывающие Восток и Запад, Юг и Север. Реализуемая стратегия Узбекистана 2030 направлена на превращение страны в активного участника мировой торговой системы. Поставлена цель увеличить экспорт товаров с высокой добавленной стоимостью до 30 миллиардов долларов. Особое внимание уделяется углублению региональных экономической интеграции. Только в 2025 году торговый оборот Узбекистана со странами Центральной Азии превысил 5,5 миллиардов долларов, увеличился почти на 10% по сравнению с предыдущим годом. Не менее важное направление привлечения инвестиций и модернизации промышленности. В прошлом году объем иностранных инвестиций достиг 35 миллиардов долларов. Свыше 14 миллиардов долларов США привлечено от международных финансовых институтов. Уважаемые коллеги, Узбекистан твердо убежден, укрепление глобальной торговли, основанной на правилах, это путь к миру, процветанию и устойчивому развитию. Наша страна готова быть надежным партнером, мостом между регионами и драйвером справедливого экономического взаимодействия. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you very much. Next is Ms. Demarji from Algeria, followed by Mr. Senakis from Cyprus.
السيد رئيس الجمعية البرلمانية لمنظمة الأمن والتعاون في أوروبا، السيدات والسادة رؤساء البرلمانات والوفود البرلمانية، الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم. يشرفني أن أشارك بمعية زملائي من البرلمان الجزائري في المنتدى المتوسطي الذي تنظمه الجمعية البرلمانية لمنظمة الأمن والتعاون في أوروبا في إطار دورتها 23 السنوية، وأن نساهم بمعية زملائنا من البرلمانات الأوروبية في إيجاد الحلول للأزمات والتحديات المتنامية في المنطقة الأورو المتوسطية، وذلك انطلاقاً من مبادئ الحوار والتشاور والتنسيق التي يمليها حسن الجوار ويجسدها، وتجسيداً لمسؤوليتنا كعضو مدعو. أود بداية أن أتوجه بخالص الامتنان إلى الجمعية الوطنية الكبرى للجمهورية التركية الصديقة على حفاوة الاستقبال وكرم الضيافة، كما أنقل تحيات سيد رئيس الجمهورية الجزائرية عبد المجيد تبون ورئيس مجلس الأمة عزوز ناصري إلى رؤساء وأعضاء البرلمانات المشاركة، وبالخصوص إلى رئاسة وأعضاء البرلمان التركي، متمنيا لهم كل التوفيق والسداد. وباسم مجلس الأمة الجزائري رئيسا وأعضاء أتقدم بأخلص التهاني إلى الجمعية البرلمانية لمنظمة الأمن والتعاون في أوروبا بمناسبة مرور 50 عام على تأسيسها ومراكمتها لنصف قرن من العمل على تحقيق أهدافها التنموية والأمنية، وأثمن حرصها على ترقية التعاون متعدد الأطراف بكافة أبعاده، ومنها تعزيز شراكتها مع دول حوض المتوسط. وغدا إن شاء الله سوف أبرز النظرية الجزائرية في هذا الموضوع، وشكرا.
Thank you very much, Ms. Demarchi. Next is Mr. Sinakis of Cyprus, followed by Ms. Karapetian from Armenia.
Thank you, Madam President. Dear colleagues, trade has been a pillar of today's development and peace in Europe and beyond by binding economies together through mutual interest and predictable rules. After the World War II, opening markets and integrating industries, starting with the coal and steel, turned rivalries into supply chains, transferring competition from battlefields to boardrooms. The EU's single market, the General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade, and the World Trade Organization framework lowered costs, increased incomes, and created millions of jobs, making at the same time prosperity reliant on cooperation. This interdependence stemming from global trade doesn't eliminate geopolitics, of course, but it raises the price of aggression and rewards stability. This is exactly why Cyprus and the EU are asking for the opening of Turkey's ports and airports to traffic from Cyprus. It would be a pragmatic, confidence-building step that serves economic and security alike. Such a development could enhance maritime and aviation safety, and it will bring Turkey in line with some of its obligations vis-à-vis the EU. In short, allowing access is a practical win-win. It builds trust, strengthens lawful rule-based trade, and delivers tangible prosperity to citizens and businesses. Besides, Cyprus, recognizing the powerful potential of trade and build trust, has already accepted 20 years ago regulated commerce from the occupied areas to the government-controlled areas through the EU's Green Line regulation. This framework allows the movement of certain goods across the dividing line under harmonized standards and custom checks. By enabling small and medium-sized enterprises and producers on both sides to transact transparently and safely, it fosters everyday cooperation. These are small, practical steps that can gradually rebuild confidence between communities in Cyprus. In any case, the Eastern Mediterranean shows both the promise and the pressures of rule-based trade in energy. As a crossroads of Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, it can anchor clear energy corridors for wind, solar, and LNG interconnections. But to unlock this potential, we must uphold freedom of navigation and maritime safety, respect international law, including the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, and deepen practical cooperation. In changing environment where the rise of new economic poles is reshaping capital, commodity, and technology flows, our answer should not be protectionism, but enhanced partnership anchored in transparency, predictability, and reciprocity. That is how we safeguard fairness, connectivity, and sustainable growth for our citizens today and for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Ms. Kapatian, and she will be followed by Mr. Dunava from Romania.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, on August 8 in Washington, D.C., Armenia and Azerbaijan took a historic step by initialing the peace agreement and by reaffirming their commitment to reopen all communications based on full respect for sovereignty and jurisdiction. Armenia and the United States have also agreed to work together and with other mutually agreed partners on the Trump Road for international peace and prosperity. This is an extensive infrastructure project for laying new railroads, gas and oil pipelines, and internet cables throughout Armenia. In this respect, dear colleagues, when talking about infrastructure projects in the South Caucasus, it is extremely important to use legitimate terminology that has been agreed upon mutually and respects the principle of territorial integrity and sovereignty. This October, Azerbaijan announced that it is lifting all restrictions on the transit of goods to Armenia through its territory, and President Aliyev called it a clear indication that peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia exists not only on paper, but in practice. Armenia has expressed its appreciation for this and willingness to provide transit from Turkey to Azerbaijan, as well as between the two parts of Azerbaijan, through existing roads on our territory already today. Grain transfers from Kazakhstan to Armenia and from Russia to Armenia, transiting the territories of Azerbaijan and Georgia, demonstrate that the wider region takes peace for a fact and is already benefiting from the unblocking of communications. In the South Caucasus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia can reinforce each other's as well as the region's role as a critical hub connecting Europe, the Black Sea, Turkey, the Caspian Sea, Central Asia, and beyond. We remain hopeful to have an open land border and establish diplomatic ties with our neighbor Turkey very soon. Finally, this new regional environment opens genuine opportunities for exploring possibilities that lie at the heart of the European Union's global gateway strategy and the Middle Corridor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Karapetyan from Armenia, for these good news that we are all very happy to hear. Next is Mr. Dunava from Romania, followed by Michele Muratore from San Marino.
You, Madam Chair, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. In our region, the war of aggression against Ukraine has brutally reminded us that trade routes, energy corridors, ports, and digital infrastructure are also elements of security. Attacks on infrastructure, blockades, and disruption in the Black Sea do not only affect one country, they ripple across supply chains, food security, and energy markets far beyond our borders. Romania has become a key transit hub for Ukrainian grain and other goods, contributing to regional and global food security. We are investing in modern transport links along the Danube and through the Black Sea in synergy with EU initiatives, such as the Trans-European Transport Network and the 3 Seas initiative. Romania believes that connectivity should be the backbone of economic and trade exchanges between states, and it's open to all initiatives aimed at fostering global trade, economic prosperity, and sustainable development. My country's geopolitical position between East and West, the Black Sea serves as a platform linking Europe and Asia, and Romania plays an important role in regional and international transport projects involving this area in order to enhance Eurasian transport links. This Black Sea connectivity is exemplified by the port of Constanța, the largest port on the Black Sea, whose strategic position makes it an important link of the Trans-Caspian international transport route, or Middle Corridor, as part of the European Caucasus-Asia corridors. Since January 1st, 2025, Romania has joined the Schengen area with land transport. This represents a tremendous opportunity for all freight transport originating from the Middle Corridor with entry into the Constanța port, now with the direct access to the Schengen area by road or by rail, so we strongly encourage the relevant use of these options. In a world marked by geopolitical tensions, economic uncertainty, and technological disruption, rule-based global trade is not a luxury. It is a cornerstone of stability and a precondition for sustainable growth. As parliamentarians gathered in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, we have the responsibility and the opportunity to strengthen this rule-based order by the laws we pass, by the oversight we exercise, and by the cooperation we build across borders. Romania remains firmly committed to an open, fair, and sustainable global trading system, and to working with all OSCE participating states to translate these principles into concrete action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunova. Next is Mr. Muratore from San Marino, followed by Mr. Crow from Ireland.
Thank you, Madam President. At a time when global competition too often prevails over cooperation, our task is to reaffirm the strength of rules, trust, and international solidarity. A global trading system based on clear and shared rules is not a technical detail. It is the foundation of fairer and more stable order. Where rules apply equally to all, there is a fairness. Where commitments are respected, trust is built. And where there is trust, peace and prosperity can flourish. To strengthen a rule-based trading system means choosing transparency over arbitrariness, cooperation over isolation. It also means building connectivity that unites in infrastructure, in energy, in data, and among people. Every bridge built between nations is a barrier against mistrust and division. But economic growth can no longer be separated from sustainability. The future of global trade depends on greener, fairer, and more inclusive value chains. Supporting the environment, workers' rights, and local community is not a cost. It is the smartest investment in our shared future. The OSCE, with its capacity for dialogue and its vocation to link security, economy, and human rights, has a crucial role to play in protecting and renewing our common rules. And even the small states, those that deeply believe in multilateralism, will continue, as they always have, to do their part with consistency and constructive spirit. Because a fair and sustainable trading system is not merely an economic mechanism, it is a political and moral project, a choice of civilization. To defend the rules is to defend a world that is fair, more connected, and more peaceful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moratori from San Marino. Next is Mr. Sean Crow from Ireland, followed by Ms. Pashayeva from Azerbaijan.
Colleagues, I agree entirely that global trade must be rules-based, but we have increasingly seen a weaponization of trade and trade tariffs that underline the weakness of the system that has been built. Countries like Israel commit genocide, and trade continues as usual, unhindered. Free trade is often championed as a driver of economic growth, efficiency and prosperity, promising lower prices, increased consumer choice and the spread of wealth. However, while free trade has undoubtedly contributed to economic globalisation, it can also have detrimental impacts on human rights and the environment, particularly in developing countries. The pursuit of profit through unregulated global markets can exacerbate human rights abuses, contribute to environmental degradation, and entrench inequality, posing significant risks to both people and the planet. One of the most prominent dangers of free trade agreements is the potential to undermine workers, especially in low-wage economies. Too often we've seen the extremes involving child labour, forced labour, unsafe working conditions and the suppression of land and trade union rights. Free trade's relationship with the environmental degradation and climate change is also deeply problematic. Industries are encouraged to move production to regions with lax environmental regulations, where they can exploit natural resources without stringent oversight. This practice often leads to deforestation, water pollution and unchecked emissions, all contributing to the climate crisis. So simply put, action against climate change is bad for profit margins. By their nature, free trade agreements prioritise economic goals over human rights, environmental or social considerations. Trade deals often also lack provisions that explicitly protect the environment or address climate change. The Paris Agreement on climate change was not fully incorporated into many trade agreements, and the mechanism to enforce environmental or human rights standards are weak or non-existent. So only by aligning trade policy with human and social rights and ecological responsibility can we ensure that free trade serves the broader goals of equity, sustainability and human dignity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crow. Next is Ms. Pashayeva from Azerbaijan, followed by Mr. Bartoszek from Iceland.
Good morning, Madam Chair, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, allow me to express my sincere gratitude to Grand National Assembly to Turkey for hosting such an important parliamentary conference in an area of growing international uncertainty. Today, it's crystal clear that amid rapid transformation in the global economy, major shifts in trade networks and deepening economic geopolitical fractures, the question of maintaining predictable, transparent, and fair trade rules has become a key condition for stability and development across our entire region. The Azerbaijani government has always prioritized integration into global transport networks, and consistent work has been implemented in this sphere over the years. In order to position itself as Eurasian's key logistics and transport hub, Azerbaijan has leveraged 3 decades of targeted significant investments in infrastructure development. It has upgraded its rail, road, air, and sea connectivity to support regional trade and enhance its transit potential through north-south and east-west transport corridors and oil and gas pipelines. Today, it has become obvious that those strategic infrastructure projects are slowly transforming South Caucasus region into a vital Eurasian transport and logistic hub. Furthermore, the collaboration with neighboring countries strengthens middle corridor integration and trade facilitation. Over the past 3 years, cargo transportation along the middle corridor through Azerbaijan has increased by 90%. Transit time along the corridor has also significantly reduced. Azerbaijan aims to further diversify the middle corridor through connecting the mainland of Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, which will contribute to expanding transit opportunities for international transportation and offer the opportunity to overcome isolation and become a part of regional networks for Armenia. Thus, transport becomes an instrument of peace, not confrontation. In this context, it's important to understand the key role on the Trump route for international peace and prosperity reached in Washington summit on August 8, 2025. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Pashayeva from Azerbaijan. And also to you, I would like to say that we are very grateful to hear these news of cooperation and peace. Next is Mr. Bartoszek from Iceland, followed by Ingrida Circene from Latvia.
Dear Chair, thank you. While this session champions rule-based global trade and fairness, I must observe that globally, these principles are under pressure. Free trade is giving way to protectionism, and deals are being made that would not have been called trade deals just a few years ago. Despite this global trend, Iceland, in cohesion with other EFTA countries, has been actively pursuing free trade agreements with partners such as Chile, India, Thailand, and Malaysia. We remain committed to an open global economy. However, the challenge is not just external. Many here are part of the major trade bloc, the European Union. Iceland and Norway, both countries fully integrated in the European single market through the EEA agreement and following all its rules, are now threatened by proposals from the EU to apply protective measures against specific heavy industry, namely ferroalloys, including ferrosilicon. This is fundamentally a question of fairness and rules. We strongly believe that these proposed measures contradict the letter and the spirit of the EEA Treaty. This final decision has now been postponed multiple times, which we acknowledge. However, the final solution must uphold the letter and the spirit of the EEA Treaty. If we do not expect our existing agreements, our commitment to a wider principle of rule-based global trade is fundamentally undermined. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next is Ms. Circene from Latvia, followed by Ms. Bitatse from Georgia.
In recent years, we have witnessed a dramatic shift in how people work and how commerce flows. Remote work and cross-border employment are no longer exceptions. They are increasingly the norm. People may live in one country, provide services to a company in another, pay taxes in a third, and receive social services in yet another. The questions become more complicated when applied to work that crosses borders in less traditional ways. Where should a person pay taxes if they work remotely across borders? Which country authorizes its responsibility for providing public services such as healthcare and unemployment support? If someone is self-employed, where should they contribute to their pension fund and from which country should they draw these pensions later? And if they fall ill far from their country of residence or have their work linked to another jurisdiction, which country issues their sick leave certificates and pays the benefit? These are not theoretical or distant issues. They affect real people with real lives and aspirations. All these lead us to the essential conclusion: in a world of border blurring work and global trade, we must modernize our rule-based frameworks, not to constrain innovations and connectivity, but to ensure fairness, equal access to protection, and a level playing field for all. At its core, Latvia believes in multilateral cooperation built on clear, predictable rules. We believe that global trade, connectivity, and digitalization bring great promise, but they also demand that we protect the rights of workers, ensure fair taxation, secure pension entitlements, and guarantee social protection irrespective of where someone lives and works. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingrida Tjocene from Latvia. Next is Ms. Maja Bitace from Georgia, followed by Mr. Amer Smailovic from Montenegro.
Dear Chair, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, let me begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to Turkey for its warm hospitality and the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly for convening us here in Istanbul. This year's theme, renewing multilateral cooperation through dialogue, could not be more timely. At a moment when global trade, connectivity, and sustainable growth are again the foundations of peace, our responsibility as parliamentarians is clearer than ever. Today's international environment is defined by uncertainty. Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine and the continued occupation of up to 20% of Georgia's territory illustrate the profound strain placed on our regional security architecture. In such circumstances, strengthening rule-based cooperation and respecting sovereignty, territorial integrity, and non-interference in domestic affairs is not simply desirable, it is indispensable. In this context, Georgia welcomes the recent progress in the peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan. It offers a real opportunity for regional stability and economic growth. As a historic Silk Road nation, Georgia stands ready to remain neutral, reliable partner, advancing sustainable connectivity and resilience across the wider region. The facts speak for themselves. Georgia's role in the Middle Corridor is expanding at a remarkable pace. In 2024 alone, transport volumes rose by 62%, while the modernization of the railway is increasing its capacity rapidly. At the same time, the design, construction of new highways, airports, and seaports, together with strategic potential of submarine cable project, represents far more than infrastructure development. They form the backbone of Georgia's strategic economic security, providing a safe and reliable route between Europe and Asia, reducing geopolitical risks and strengthening investor confidence. But colleagues, none of this is possible without peace at home, transparent governance, and respect of sovereignty from abroad, core commitments of the Helsinki Act. Recently, some actors have attempted to instrumentalize the OSCE for narrow political purposes in Georgia. Such interference undermines trust, fuels polarization, and weakens our organization at the momentum when the region faces worse disinformation, climate stress, and resource pressures. Only a credible, impartial OSCE can preserve stability, dialogue, and cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, Georgia carries values far larger than its size: freedom, sovereignty, peace, and connection. As a nation at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, Georgia stands ready to deepen its role as a trusted partner, a vital hub, promoting secure trade, resilient supply chains, and shared prosperity in an increasingly complex world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Smailovic from Montenegro, followed by Mr. Tulendibayev from Kyrgyzstan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, it's meaningful to discuss global trade here in Istanbul, a city that has connected continents and trade routes for centuries. For small and open economies like Montenegro, clear trade rules are essential. When the rules are followed, our businesses can plan and grow. When they are not, smaller countries feel the negative effects first and strongest. The global economy is changing quickly, and with it came challenges that test our ability to protect fair competition, sustainable connectivity, and long-term development. Let me share 3 short points. First, fairness is key. Trade needs to be predictable and transparent. Second, both digital and physical connectivity must be understood as a shared interest. Investment in infrastructure, transport corridors, and digital platforms creates opportunities for entire regions, especially the Western Balkans. Third, sustainable growth must stay at the center, and the green transition should be a chance for cooperation. I believe that the OSCE can play an important role in building trust and supporting more balanced economic development across our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Tulendibayev from Kyrgyzstan, and then followed by Baroness Winterton from the UK.
Господин председатель, уважаемые коллеги, прежде всего позвольте выразить признательность Турецкой Республике за теплый прием и отличную организацию работы сессии. Для Кыргызской Республики, как для государства, активно интегрированного в региональные международные экономические процессы, обсуждаемая тема имеет особую значимость. Сегодня мы живем в эпоху, когда торговля становится не просто экономическим механизмом, а важнейшим инструментом укрепления доверия, взаимопонимания и солидарности между народами. Когда рушатся привычные связи и растут геополитические риски, мы особенно остро осознаем необходимость сохранить дух открытости, взаимоуважения и сотрудничества. Именно эти принципы лежат в основе внешнеэкономической политики Кыргызской Республики. В современных условиях особое значение приобретает укрепление доверия между государствами и поддержание открытых, предсказуемых и недискриминационных торговых отношений. Мы убеждены, что только через диалог, сотрудничество и приверженность международным правилам можно обеспечить устойчивый экономический рост, процветание и долгосрочную стабильность. Для Кыргызстана и как для развивающей страны с открытой экономикой участие в международных интеграционных процессах имеет ключевое значение. В этой связи придается особое внимание реализации соглашений Всемирной торговой организации, а также укреплению взаимодействия в рамках других многосторонних площадок. Необходимо подчеркнуть, что указом президента Кыргызской Республики Садыра Нургожевича Джапарова утверждена национальная программа развития Кыргызской Республики до 2030 года, которая опирается на успехи предыдущих стратегических инициатив, обеспечивая преемственность развития достигнутых результатов. Основной целью новой стратегической программы остается благосостояние гражданина. Для достижения этой цели был выбран механизм человекоориентированного роста ВВП, который направлен на создание условий для повышения качества жизни населения через устойчивое экономическое развитие. Программы заданы 4 основных вектора развития: индустриализация, региональный хаб, сельское хозяйство, туризм и зеленая энергетика. Реализация этих направлений нам необходима уже несколько лет. Это дало существенный рост для нашей экономики в течение последних 3 лет. Динамика такова, что заложенные в прежние планы и стратегии цели Кыргызской Республики за короткий промежуток времени не только их достигла, но и по ряду показателей превзошла. Поэтому необходимы новые ориентиры, сопряженные, сверстанные в единый документ с четкими задачами на перспективу. Необходимо отметить, что геостратегическое положение Кыргызской республики на главном перекрестке торговых путей между крупными региональными и мировыми центрами экономического развития позволяет республике занять нишу в сфере международных транзитных перевозок. Глобально перестраивающиеся по логистическим маршруты требуют быстрых решений в части создания новых транспортных коридоров и развязок, а также логистических центров и сухих портов. Мы выступаем за развитие региональных транспортных логистических коридоров, обеспечивающих связь с Центральной Азией, с Каспийским регионом, Ближним Востоком и Европой, поддержку цифровой торговли, внедрение современных технологий, продвижение принципов зеленой экономики и устойчивого развития. Кыргызстан придает большое значение взаимосвязанности, не только экономической, но и гуманитарной. Мы убеждены, что развитие инфраструктуры, энергетических связей, образовательных и культурных обменов создает прочный фундамент для долгосрочного мира и доверия в регионе ОБСЕ. Парламентская дипломатия играет особую роль в этом процессе. Мы, парламентарии, способны формировать законодательную базу, которая укрепляет деловой климат, защищает инвестиции и способствует социальной справедливости. Кыргызская республика открыта к сотрудничеству и обмену лучшими практиками в этих областях. Уважаемые коллеги, в современном мире ни одна страна не может быть изолирована. Только через партнерство, диалог и уважение к общим правилам мы сможем обеспечить справедливую, устойчивую торговлю, которая принесет выгоды всем нашим гражданам. Кыргызстан готов вносить свой вклад в этот процесс через развитие регионального сотрудничества, укрепление
Thank you very much. Next is Baroness Winterton from the UK, followed by Mr. Oman from Algeria.
Dear colleagues, as others have said, one of the founding principles of the OSCE was to promote global economic cooperation, a recognition that global economic stability is a vital part of ensuring global security. To make that a reality, richer countries have to assist the global South countries to achieve economic growth and thriving international trade. I am the UK trade envoy to Bangladesh. I know that important measures include, first, partnerships between UK universities and Bangladesh universities to offer UK degrees in Bangladesh itself to improve education and skills and to prevent the brain drain referred to in the Porto Declaration. Secondly, directing international aid and investment to help start-up businesses to trade internationally and encourage innovation in the energy sector. Too often, financial assistance is given to low-risk multinational businesses. We have to change that. Thirdly, working with the Bangladesh government and regulatory authorities to reduce bureaucratic hurdles and root out possible corruption so that UK companies are confident about investing in the country and confident about importing goods from Bangladesh. Fourthly, making clear that supply chains have to have strict health and safety rules, so that, for example, in the ready-made garment sector, workers who are mainly women are safe. Again, part of the OSCE goal on human rights. These are a few practical examples, and the OSCE has a clear role to play in the Global South so that those countries can build economic capacity and be fully integrated trading partners. The founding principles of economic cooperation have never been more important than today.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Oman from Algeria, followed by Mr. Yetushok from Ukraine.
Excellences, distingués invités. C'est avec un sentiment de responsabilité partagée et d'espérance lucide que je prends la parole au nom de la délégation algérienne à l'occasion de cette importante conférence parlementaire de l'OSCE, placée sous le signe d'un commerce mondial réglementé, porteur d'équité et de connectivité de croissance durable. Le thème de cette séance, à lui-même, ou à lui seul, traduit l'ampleur des défis de notre temps. Il réunit les dimensions éthiques et économiques, nationales et planétaires, qui façonnent le destin de nos peuples dans un monde en profonde mutation. L'Algérie considère que le commerce doit cesser d'être un simple instrument d'influence et redevenir un outil de coopération équitable. Nous devons dépasser la logique des flux et des chiffres pour restaurer celle du sens et du droit, car le commerce, lorsqu'il s'émancipe de la régulation morale et du contrôle parlementaire, devient un champ de domination et non un vecteur de développement. Le monde a besoin d'un système commercial fondé sur la réciprocité, la transparence et la responsabilité partagée. Les pays du Sud, notamment, ne demandent pas des privilèges, mais un accès équitable au marché, aux technologies et au financement du développement. Ils demandent que les règles multilatérales cessent d'être appliquées à géométrie variable et que les principes du commerce international servent le progrès humain et non l'accumulation sans limite. C'est là, à nos yeux, la première condition de l'équité. Mais l'équité seule ne suffit pas. Le commerce moderne repose sur la connectivité, cette force invisible qui relie les continents, les infrastructures et les intelligences. Dans un monde indépendant, la connectivité n'est pas seulement un atout économique, il devient un facteur de stabilité et de confiance. Connecter, c'est unir, et unir, c'est prévenir les divisions. L'histoire nous enseigne que les nations qui échangent davantage se comprennent mieux et que les peuples qui communiquent davantage se rapprochent davantage. L'Algérie, consciente de son rôle de carrefour entre l'Afrique, la Méditerranée et l'Europe, œuvre aujourd'hui à construire une économie ouverte, connectée et intégrée dans un environnement régional. Je termine, madame. Régional, les grands projets d'infrastructures, routes transaériennes, corridors ferroviaires, interconnexions énergétiques, plateformes logistiques et numériques ne sont pas de simples ambitions techniques, ils traduisent une vision, celle d'un espace africain et méditerranéen interdépendant, capable de transformer ses ressources en prospérité partagée. Le commerce n'est pas qu'une question de flux financiers, il est aussi et surtout une passerelle entre les civilisations et les valeurs. Merci, madame.
Thank you, Mr. Oman. Next is Mr. Yevtushok from Ukraine, followed by Mr. von Gasteren of the Netherlands.
Dear colleagues, I would like to draw your attention once again to states in Ukraine after 4 years of war. Regular shelling, which is already directed at the gas and thermal power structures, emphasize the terrorist nature of Russian aggression. At the front, the Russians are physically destroying cities with aerial bombs, so that not a single building remains for reconstruction. No one is wondering about the true goals of the war anymore. It continues only because Putin simply needs to continue. The process has turned into a war of democracy with dictatorship of the civilized world and the imperial feudal system. It's obvious that Russia has been able to adopt to sanctions, and nothing except defeats on the ground can stop its terrorist thirst for the daily bloodshed. The latest events with provocations by Russian drones and aircraft in Europe show that Russia's appetite for military actions is only growing. We call on you not to stop and to strengthen your support for Ukraine, which is the last bastion as defense of Europe against the aggression that is constantly approaching. Dear colleagues, your support is a matter of survival. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yevtushok. This is all very sad for us to hear. Next is Mr. von Gasteren from the Netherlands, followed by Ms. Abrama from Latvia.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Robert Vergasteren. I'm a senator from the Netherlands and representing one of the member parties of the EPP. I would like to thank our host, Turkey, for hosting us in this great facility and town. And I would like to add, ne mutlu Turkey mdien. As a senator and international business owner, I know entrepreneurs only thrive when their employees and customers thrive. Free trade, free democracy, welfare and well-being go hand in hand. There is substantial scientific evidence that countries with democratic free elections, freedom of speech, assembly, protest and strike exhibit superior economic performance, human welfare and quality of life compared to those lacking these. And human prosperity fosters peace. A study using global data from 50 years found that transitions to democracy increases trade and GDP by more than 20%. This is why OSCE has an important mission. However, based on the Freedom in the World 2025 report from Freedom House, which assesses political rights and civil liberties, including free speech, free press, free elections, independent courts, and freedom to demonstrate and strike, also some of our OSCE states classified as partly free or not free, indicating they are not full democracies. As a community, let us pay special attention to the overall status of democracy, trade, and economy in our beautiful countries by means of frequent dashboard data reporting, as well as targeted programs to improve the performance of our community and continuous state of alert from this Parliamentary Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Ms. Abrama from Latvia, followed by Mr. Kazimir Kleiner from Poland.
Dear colleagues, no doubt the main drivers of sustainable growth, such as rules-based fair trade and cooperation, today are struggling under tariffs imposed by the US and uncertainty surrounding geopolitical tension and trade policy. All that affects competitiveness of our countries, of the European Union as a whole. Despite that, Latvia's economy is on track to expand steadily in the coming years through defense financing, projected 5% of GDP, as well as moving towards sustainability goals in first-line green and digital technologies. The investments, security and defense in Latvia provide for huge cooperation opportunities between countries, encompassing development of infrastructure, procurement and maintenance of military equipment, research and development of dual-use innovative technologies. Another sector which offers immense cooperation and trade opportunities is clean energy. We in Latvia understand how it's crucial to eliminate dependence on Russia's fossil energy in Europe, not to be in trade with aggressor who is using money coming from trading partners for killing people in Ukraine and causing enormous damage to land, nature, and with it to human living space. We have to step up our collective efforts to secure affordable and clean energy supply and integrate a more interconnected European Union's energy market. And there are also huge opportunities for our mutual cooperation. I fully agree with what today said Professor Yazgan. OSCE could play and should play a crucial role promoting alignment of standards for green and digital technologies. What we can do now? We have to cut costs and lower expenditures to minimize tariff impacts and to become competitive. And this could be our answer to the current economic uncertainty and geopolitical tension. Keyword is cooperation and connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Kleiner from Poland, followed by Ms. Rojaka from Lithuania.
Madam President, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank the host for the excellent organization and the speakers for their interesting remarks. At present, we continue to struggle with the fulfillment of the OSCE fundamental objectives. One of the goals underlying the establishment of the OSCE was the prevention of armed conflicts. Unfortunately, this has not been successfully achieved. Because of the Russian aggression, the OSCE is in crisis. Yet, despite these difficulties, the organization remains committed to its original mandate and continues to seek solutions that enhance stability and support sustainable development. However,
international trade is currently confronted with a range of challenges that require decisive response from democratic states. Rising geopolitical tensions, the fragmentation of global supply chains, and the use of trade as a tool of political leverage are eroding trust in multilateral frameworks and weakening the global trading system. Poland, as a member state of the European Union, has a vital interest in promoting open, fair, and sensitive global trade. Key priorities include supporting the export capacity of small and medium-sized enterprises, diversifying trade partnerships, and advancing the digitalization of economic process. Dear colleagues, parliaments of OSCE participating states play a vital role in monitoring trade policy, supporting the reform of international institutions, and promoting the principles of fairness, transparency, and accountability in the global economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kleiner. Next is Ms. Royaka from Lithuania, followed by Mr. Barry Ward from Ireland.
Dear Madam Vice President and esteemed colleagues, global trade is becoming more fragmented. Trade routes are being rerouted due to geopolitical tensions, and regulatory frameworks are becoming more complex. Tariffs changes have shaken the whole world. And disruptions from cyber attacks to hybrid attacks by weaponizing illegal immigration and smuggling balloons from some neighboring Eastern countries are becoming more frequent and don't add to improving trade cooperation. So uncertainty is on a rise and it limits economic growth. However, there is at least one source of growth, technologies and AI as a specific instrument for promoting growth and trade. The importance of that was already mentioned in the presentation from OECD and also from the colleagues from Canada. In this volatile environment, the traditional view of trade has been changed and unfortunately is dangerously outdated. AI market is among the leaders. Its global market is heading by 300 billion this year and forecast to hit 2 trillion by 2030. So it has 4 dimensions: explosive growth, massive investment from the private sector, strategic importance, and regulations that are associated with the high risk that should be addressed. But uncomfortable truth is that the government and policymakers are lagging behind in all 4 categories. And by doing so, we're missing our opportunities, and we do not have a lot of them today. Trade is not longer about the crossing borders, it's about crossing these new boundaries, and the policymakers have to shape that. So we are in the budget period. Take a closer look from the national perspective, how much and how efficiently it is dedicated to AI and technologies. Doing not enough is most expensive option today, and the choice is to pay for progress now or pay for much more for failure later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Barry Ward from Ireland, followed by Mr. Gulsoda from Tajikistan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We all know that trade is as old as humanity itself, but it's also the lifeblood of international cooperation. It's hugely important to bring nations together because there is a quid pro quo, because there's a give and take. Both sides gain something when trade at an international level works. Unfortunately, it has to work on a rules-based system. Without rules, it is a tool for exploitation and the triumph of the powerful over the weak in terms of nations. And so the importance of a rules-based system cannot be overstated. Unfortunately also, although we've worked towards establishing a global rules-based system for trade, and in fact an Irishman was very much involved in that, in recent times we see that rules-based order being chipped away and some countries using trade as a weapon rather than as a tool to bring countries together. That is genuinely unfortunate. And coming from Ireland, we have a true understanding of the importance of modern international trade. We are a small, open economy that has benefited hugely from trade. We have benefited because we obviously receive the international investment of other countries, but they also benefit from the environment that we create for their business. Part of that is an educated workforce, part of that is a stable economy, but also part of that is a stable polity. And when the stability in trade is absent, everybody loses. And as I say, some countries are beginning to weaponize trade, particularly powerful nations who have the capacity to do that. What they don't seem to understand is that they too will lose if they don't respect the rules-based order that has been established. And rather than accept the fact that some countries can throw their weight around and use trade as a bullying tactic, we, particularly as an organization of parliamentarians, need to stand up to that and make clear statements that rules and stability is the only way that trade can benefit all of the countries of the world.
Thank you, Mr. Ward from Ireland. Next is Mr. Gulsoda from Tajikistan, followed by Mr. Ulrich Nielsen from Sweden.
Спасибо, уважаемый председатель, уважаемые участники. Для стран нашего региона развитие торговли на основе справедливости и взаимной выгоды – это путь к устойчивому росту, занятости и социальной стабильности. Региональная связанность превращает внутренние рынки в мосту между Востоком и Западом, формируя новые маршруты поставок, инвестиционные потоки и производственные цепочки. Не менее важной задачей является гармонизация технических регламентов с международными стандартами, взаимное признание сертификации и результатов оценки соответствия способствует свободному обращению товаров, укрепляет доверие к качеству продукции и обладает интеграцией национальной экономики и международной цепочки. Цифровая торговля становится новой основой глобальной экономики. Важно обеспечить защиту персональных данных, кибербезопасность, развитие трансграничных облачных сервисов и разных доступов к цифровым платформам. Это позволит странам региона интегрироваться в мировую цифровую экономику, развитие электронной коммерции и инновационные услуги. Парламенты могут придать мощный импульс этим процессам, они способны ускорить ратификацию соглашений об избежании двойной налогообложения, усовершенствовать таможенную процедуру по принципу единого окна, проводить оценку воздействия законодательных инициатив на малый бизнес и климат, а также обеспечить строгий контроль за выполнением антикоррупционных норм. Только справедливая торговля создает долгосрочную основу для устойчивого развития. Она формирует новые рабочие места, способствует росту благосостояния и укрепляет доверие между народами. В этом смысле торговля – это не просто обмен товарами, а обмен доверием, знаниями и возможностями. Таджикистан рассматривает экономическое сотрудничество как фундамент стабильности и мира, регион, где царят взаимное уважение, прозрачные правила и добрососедство, способен стать примером справедливого, взаимовыгодного и устойчивого роста для всего пространства ОБСЕ. Благодарю за внимание.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gulsoda from Tajikistan. Next is Mr. Ulrich Nielsen from Sweden, followed by Mr. Christoph Slag Mulder from Belgium.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and fellow parliamentarians. We talked a lot about the benefits of trade and the rule-based trade. I would like to add on another thing, and that is that trade has the possibility to unite people, because the prerequisite for a good trade is actually that you have knowledge of other countries, knowledge of other systems, knowledge of other people. And that also leads to connections between people. When the engineer has to call the buyer and ask, do you really mean this thread or do you mean that design? Then you talk to each other, you reach understanding, you reach friendship, and you reach cooperation. So trades open ways for people to connect. And I think, and in the light of what we discussed yesterday, the connections between people are actually the real fundamental for a sustainable and peaceful development. So when we create obstacles to trade, it may be tariffs, it may be different sanctions, or it may be a different obstacles, then we actually weakens the dialogue. And therefore we threaten the peace and development, because when we don't have trade, then we are on the slippery slope where we don't have connections between people. So for me, this is a very important task. It's important for us to lift up the human perspective of trade. Thank you for the floor, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen from Sweden. Before I give the floor to the last two speakers, I would like to inform the panel that we would be happy to hear a last sentence from them, a takeaway sentence. We will begin with you, Bakut, and just continue the line all the way to John. At best, just one sentence for, a note card that you would like all of us to take with us. At the most, 1 minute speaking time. The floor now goes to Mr. Slagmulder from Belgium, followed by Ms. Pieper from Ukraine.
Thank you, Madam Chair, dear colleagues. When we talk about rule-based global trade, we must first acknowledge that many of these rules simply no longer work today. For open economies like Flanders, the main problem is not trade itself, but unfair trade. Our companies face competitors who produce without environmental standards, without labor protection, and often with direct state subsidies. Free trade without equal rules is not free trade, but economic self-destruction. That is why I want to highlight 3 points. One, fair trade begins with protection against dumping. Europe still allows products to enter the market far below cost price, especially from China and other state-controlled economies. This destroys our industry, our strategic capacity, and our jobs. 2, strategic autonomy must return to the center of our policy. The pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and geopolitical tensions in Asia have shown how dangerous dependency can be. Europe needs reindustrialization, local production, and more control over critical value chains such as pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, energy technologies, and strategic metals. 3, sustainability cannot be an excuse for naivety. European companies invest in energy transition and innovation, but they cannot compete with countries where no climate regulations apply at all. This undermines both our economy and the credibility of global sustainability efforts. If we want a fair and secure trade model, we must stop being naive. That means blocking dumping, defending our industries, protecting our borders, and bringing critical production back home. Reshoring and nearshoring are essential to rebuild economic security. Only when we regain real control over our strategic sectors, we can safeguard prosperity, innovation, and social stability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pieper from Ukraine is not in the room. Ms. Pieper, are you here? No. Wonderful. So we are through our speakers list. No, I'm very sorry that Ms. Pieper is not here, of course. But I have to be conscious of our time. So we are done with our speakers list. Thank you for the time discipline. Please forgive me for cutting some of you off. I'm a mom of 4 teenagers, so I am used to have a strict hand. This I will take home with me. It was a very good discussion. Many, many thanks. And I would like now to give the floor to our speakers. And we will begin with you, Bakut. What is your takeaway message?
Thank you very much, dear Gudrun. Dear colleagues, Excellencies, thanks for your thoughtful interventions, both on challenges and, most importantly, on the opportunities. The topic of connectivity serves indeed as an opportunity, enhancing cross-sectoral, cross-border and transboundary dialogue and cooperation. In this regard, OSCE still matters. OSCE is the largest regional security organization with 57 participating states and with very diverse cultural, historical, political, geographical background. And in this regard, I think based on the mandate you participating states trusted to us, and based on the commitments you participating states taken, OSCE is still ready and enabled to provide platform for policy dialogue, and with existing toolbox, OSCE institutions jointly with field operations is still in ability and in position to deliver those mandates to support participating states to enhance transboundary cooperation. But for doing this, we need your support, your constructive approach, and your recommitment to Helsinki principles. Thank you.
Thank you, Bakut. Azai.
Thank you, dear Gudrun. First of all, I want to thank you for your very strict and disciplined moderation. It really helped us to stick to the time. So I also appreciate, dear colleagues, your intervention and your contribution you made. Of course, for 1 minute, I can just summarize that listening to your views, I came into conclusion that the climate change and the conflicts are very, very unprecedented, place unprecedented stress on our economy and on our society in general. And also, many of you very, very rightly highlighted that the multilateralism should be strengthened, should be stay in our political agenda. And of course, this is something that we have to really enhance in the future. And also some of you very rightly mentioned your concern about the weaponizing the trade and the geopolitical competition that actually undermining our sustainable growth and the connectivity. Of course, listening to you, many of you have rightly mentioned about the reliable connectivity and the reliable flow of the trade, and also the issue that is really have a main concern for us that have discussed thoroughly here, which is about the predictable and sustainable and secure trade routes. This is really very important for us. But finally, I would like to say that we will discuss all these issues in the winter meeting in Vienna. I do believe that our committee will come up with new ideas, and we will have another opportunity to, let's say, cover all the aspects of today's discussion. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Thank you, dear. Professor Yazgan.
Okay. All commentators and speakers have mentioned about, without any exception, free trade, rule-based trade, and all these impediments on trade that are recently occurring. So therefore, that means we are moving from that side to a new world on not rule-based trade. So during my presentation, I tried to explain this has started long before than the recent trade wars and tariff wars and etc. So with the extensive implementation of industrial policy, different interventions, several ones. So therefore, you know, what we need is another platform to coordinate all these interventions and then new trends towards not rule-based trade. So therefore, obviously, this as OSCE is a natural platform to coordinate all this dialogue and coordination, cooperation, etc., to generate a new rule-based trade and a free trade platform. Why we need that, obviously, is growth and trade is positively correlated. So therefore, all these impediments towards trade will generate less growth, contraction and contraction in trade. So therefore, with in this new world, we need more measures to promote free trade and expansion of global trade again. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Yaskan and John Drummond.
Thank you so much. Well, this morning I'm struck by the extent to which we've heard so much commonality on recognizing the linkages between trade, openness, rules, and prosperity. And for me, trade data, evidence, and a common set of facts are a useful antidote to trade tensions and disruptions. I take away from this meeting the scope for strengthened OECD-OSCE cooperation, and I look forward to putting that into action, working with you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is exactly 11:30. I'm quite surprised we made it. I have to say, to wrap up, we come from very different backgrounds, worldviews, different cultures, different realities, different problems. But everybody here seems to agree that we need to have a fair, rules-based system, that we need peace and stability, that these rules need to be internationally respected, and that within them we should uphold human rights. We have a wider set of rules. We already mentioned the Helsinki Final Charter and the 10 principles. And for those who say we want to share in this, but we feel left out, I have to say that it is very important to respect the wider set of rules that we are in, also to participate in this economic trade set of rules. We have heard about the necessity of using the opportunities of AI. This is complicated but very important. Another thing to talk about in a second committee. And we have all talked about how the Parliamentary Assembly could be a great platform to create the trust that is needed and to be the platform on which strategic connectivity is created. And maybe the next agenda item is a very good occasion to do so, to build trust and talk about connectivity. And that is the lunch break. We are very grateful to our Turkish hosts for the incredible food we have been served here. And we are looking forward to have some more of that. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, give a great round of applause to this incredible panel and to all of us and to our translators. Bon appetit, and see you here very soon for the next session.